Okay, so you've sent us a ton of stuff about the internet and where it's headed. We've got everything from AI that might be way smarter than we realize,
Mm-hmm.
to solar flares that could totally fry our electronics, to these, like, shadowy figures controlling what we see online. It's wild.
Yeah, and it really does feel like we're all kind of grappling with how to understand these potential problems, almost like the internet's just getting too big and complicated for any of us to wrap our heads around.
Totally. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive, right? We're going to sort through it all, figure out what's actually worth worrying about,
Mm.
and hopefully, find some glimmers of hope along the way.
Sounds good. So where do we even start?
Well, we have to start with this dead internet theory, right? It's kind of the elephant in the room, or I guess the bots in the room. Have you ever had that feeling online like the conversations are just too repetitive, too artificial, like you're mostly talking to bots?
Oh, all the time. And that's basically what the dead internet theory is saying. There's this video, all time, that dives into it claims huge chunks of the internet are basically ghost towns, just bots, AI-generated content, and these algorithms messing with us.
They actually compare it to a Potemkin village, which is like this fake town built to impress visitors.
Hmm.
They say Google search results are kind of like that, making it seem like there's tons of information and different opinions, but it's all just a facade.
Yeah. The video actually tries to test this by limiting Google searches to just 50 pages. And even for massive topics like climate change or football, they only find a few hundred results. For something with as much online chatter as aliens, they only got 146.
That's way less than you'd think, right? I mean, the internet's supposed to be this huge, ever-expanding thing.
Right, and that's the whole point the video is making. I think the internet we actually experience, the stuff we can easily find, might be way smaller and more controlled than we realize. And that control could be coming from these algorithms that are designed to keep us hooked on specific kinds of content.
Speaking of algorithms, the video also argues that platforms like YouTube are practically designed to keep us glued to our screens, constantly feeding us more of what we already like, even if it's not necessarily true or even helpful.
And that can lead to issues like, suppressing dissenting voices. Say the algorithm notices you like cat videos, right? Well, you'll be bombarded with more cat videos. But if you start questioning things or expressing unpopular opinions, your content might get buried.
The video even talks about anti-war sentiment, saying those views often get a ton of pushback online.
And that brings up a bigger, almost scarier question. What if critical thinking and nuanced discussion are being actively discouraged online? What if we're being trained to just accept what we're given instead of actually engaging with different ideas?
Right. It's like we're all living in these echo chambers where everyone seems to agree, even if it's not genuine. And to make it even creepier, the video gets into the whole role of bots and AI and all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some studies claim that up to 60% of all web traffic isn't even human. It's just bots pretending to be people, liking posts, leaving comments, inflating views to create this false sense of popularity or consensus.
Hold on. So those comments I'm reading, the likes on my post, they could all be fake. That's really unsettling.
It really makes you wonder who or what you're even interacting with online. And if you can't tell who's real, how can you trust the information you're seeing?
It's kind of like that thing the video talks about with some YouTubers seeing a dip in subscribers every time they upload something new. They claim it could be a way to manipulate the platform and favor more corporate-friendly content.
Yeah, it's kind of this disturbing picture, isn't it? Like this invisible hand controlling what we see and hear, pushing certain narratives and silencing others.
And the dead internet theory goes even further. They talk about deepfakes and how those could be used to, completely blur the lines between real and fake. If AI can perfectly mimic someone's face and voice, how can we ever be sure what's genuine?
It's a huge concern for trust and authenticity online. If we can't verify where information is coming from, we're basically stuck in this constant state of uncertainty.
And then the video delves into some, conspiracy theory territory. They suggest that the shutdown of DARPA's LifeLog program, this massive database meant to track people's every move, happened right around when Facebook launched.
The implication being that this technology, which people thought was too invasive, just kind of morphed into something we all accepted: social media.
And the crazy part is, we all willingly signed up for it, right? Sharing our lives, thoughts, data, without really thinking about the consequences.
It does make you think about how technology is being used to gather information about us on a scale we might not even fully grasp.
So after all that, what's the verdict? Is the internet really dead?
It's tough to say for sure. The video doesn't offer any, clear-cut answers, but it does raise some really important questions.
So it's not about panicking, but being more aware of these potential manipulations. It's about thinking critically about what we see online and getting information from a variety of sources.
Exactly. It's about being active in the digital world, not just passively accepting what we're given. And that brings us to another crucial part of this deep dive, the power of search engines, specifically Google.
Yeah, we all use Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
To find information, to navigate the internet. But what if those search results are being manipulated to influence what we see and believe?
That's where this idea of the search engine manipulation effect, or SEMI, comes in. One of your sources talked about how biased search results can actually sway voters' opinions without them even realizing it.
And this is where it gets scary, because research shows that biased search rankings can shift undecided voters by up to 20%, and even more for certain groups. That's a huge impact, especially when you think about the fact that 95% of people don't even bother going past the first page results.
Those top few links hold so much power over our beliefs and decisions. And the source talks about how companies and maybe even governments can manipulate this using something called SEO, or search engine optimization. They can basically bury negative information and boost positive stuff to shape public opinion.
It's like this super subtle propaganda machine quietly messing with our thoughts and beliefs.
And the scariest part? Most people have no clue it's even happening.
That's why it's so important to understand how these algorithms work, how they can be used, and how to find information from a bunch of different sources. What we see on that first page might not be the whole story.
Exactly. We need to be in control of our online experience, not just taking in whatever's given to us.
All right, so we've got this dead internet thing and the power of search engines. Now, let's take it a step further with this concept of Google search results being like a Potemkin village.
It really builds on that dead internet theory, right? This idea that Google is designed to make the internet seem bigger and more diverse than it actually is.
And that experiment we talked about earlier with the limited search results, finding only a few hundred pages for complex topics, really backs that up, doesn't it? If those big, important topics only show a handful of results, it makes you wonder what else is out there.
It definitely raises questions about why it's so hard to find truly unique viewpoints online. If those search results are being manipulated, can we actually break out of our echo chambers?
Well, the all-time video talks about a few reasons for this illusion of scale. Money is a big one. Google's a business, and they make money by controlling what we see and ultimately what we buy.
But it also touches on the potential for political manipulation. Imagine if governments could control what people find online. In a world where so many rely on the internet for news, that's a terrifying thought.
Absolutely. And this actually connects to another issue the video brought up, how online content is constantly disappearing. They call it disappearing internet. Have you ever tried to find an old article or website only to discover it's just gone? This is why that matters.
The video shared this crazy stat. Almost half of the links in U.S. Supreme Court opinions are now dead. And tons of research papers are just vanishing, which makes it harder and harder to access important information.
They even mentioned how Google got rid of their cached links feature. The one that used to let you see a snapshot of a deleted web page. Now it's way harder to track changes or hold websites accountable.
That loss of information is a huge problem. It weakens our collective memory and makes it way harder to verify what people say. We're losing the ability to learn from the past.
The video talks about the importance of digital archiving and preservation, but it's such a massive undertaking. It needs cooperation from individuals, organizations, government, everyone.
What's really concerning is the impact on academic research and historical records. Imagine if huge chunks of history were just erased from the internet. How would future generations learn about the past?
It'd be like losing entire chapters from a history book. Okay, so we've talked about the dead internet theory, the power of search engines, and this disappearing internet. Now let's switch gears to something that could disrupt the internet in a much more physical way. Solar storms.
You sent some sources about this, and they paint a pretty vivid picture of what could happen.
We're talking about these huge bursts of energy from the sun, like solar flares and coronal mass ejections that could actually fry electronics and knock out power grids, basically shutting down the internet across the globe.
One of the videos, The Truth About the Imminent Internet Apocalypse, describes this potential doomsday scenario where a massive solar storm hits Earth. And it's not pretty. People lose access to everything, communication, banking, which leads to widespread panic and social unrest.
That sounds pretty dramatic.
It is, but they admit this worst-case scenario is unlikely. But even a smaller solar storm could cause a lot of disruption. They even use the term internet apocalypse to describe the impact. They clarify that it wouldn't be the literal end of the world, but a major setback for our digitally dependent society.
To show how real the danger is, the video mentions some historical examples.
Like the Carrington event in 1859. This huge surge of power went through telegraph lines, causing disruptions, even electrocuting some operators. And in 1989, a solar storm knocked out the power grid in Quebec, leaving millions in the dark for hours.
Wow, that's scary. So, solar storms are a real threat. They can do some serious damage. Imagine a world without internet for weeks or even months.
That's a question we all need to be thinking about. How resilient are our systems? How prepared are we as individuals?
The video makes a good point that our dependence on electronics has just exploded since those historical events.
Back then, a power outage was an inconvenience. Now it could paralyze entire industries. It's a whole different ballgame.
But there is some good news. The video also points out that people are working to reduce the risks. Governments and companies are investing in tougher power grids, and scientists are getting better at predicting and preparing for solar storms.
It shows that even with these scary threats looming, we can still take action to protect ourselves and build a more resilient future.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty intense potential threats to the internet. Now let's talk about one that's already happening. The gradual disappearance of online content. We briefly touched on this, but it's worth taking a deeper look.
You're talking about that silent disappearance described in the video. The internet is disappearing. It's happening because of a few things. Link rot, deliberate removal of content, and this thing called thin content.
Hold on, link rot. And what's thin content?
Okay, so link rot is when links to websites and articles just stop working, because the content has been moved or deleted. It's like trying to follow a path that's been washed away. And thin content, those are pages that don't really offer much value to visitors. They're often full of ads, affiliate links, or just fluff. The problem is, these pages often rank high in search results, pushing down more valuable content.
So it's like clicking on a promising link and getting a page that's basically useless.
Exactly. And the video argues that this is partly because of Google's focus on SEO. It's led to this huge flood of low-quality content just to attract clicks and make money from ads. They even mention these affiliate churn websites and YouTube channels that are just fronts for selling products and making a quick buck.
So it's all about profit, even if it means sacrificing the quality of information online.
That's the argument. And these practices contribute to the disappearance of valuable content. They crowd out the good stuff, making it way harder to find what we're looking for.
It's like searching for a needle in a haystack of digital junk. And as more and more content disappears, we're losing pieces of our history and knowledge.
The video says that almost half the links in U.S. Supreme Court opinions are dead. It's pretty mind-blowing. Even the information we consider super important and official isn't safe from disappearing.
That raises a lot of concerns about future research, legal cases, and just understanding our own history.
Absolutely. And to make matters worse, Google getting rid of its cached links feature makes it even harder to track those changes and hold websites accountable. If a website changes its story or removes something incriminating, there's no way to go back and see what was originally there.
Another digital cover-up, letting people erase their tracks.
Exactly. And it raises a lot of concerns about transparency and accountability online. The video argues that this, combined with the rise of thin content and other manipulative practices, is changing the internet in a fundamental way.
So it's not that open democratic platform it was supposed to be anymore.
That's what they're saying. It's becoming more and more controlled by corporations and algorithms, burying real information and diverse viewpoints under mountains of useless stuff.
The video uses this analogy of a farmer's market to describe the old internet, a place where people from all walks of life came together to share their ideas and creations.
It was vibrant and maybe a little chaotic, but it was a place where genuine connection and discovery could happen.
And the video seemed to really mourn the loss of that kind of internet. Like, we're trading it for something much less authentic, much less human.
It's a powerful message that makes you question where we're headed and what we might be losing along the way.
So, with all these threats and changes, what does the future hold for the internet?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, let's dive into that next time. We'll explore if there's any hope for a better internet and, more importantly, what we can do to make it happen.
Sounds like a plan. It does feel like the internet is at this crossroads, Will it be a tool for connection and learning, or will it become a weapon for manipulation and control?
Those are some heavy questions. To understand how we got here, maybe we should take a detour into the world of open source software. That software where anyone can access and contribute to the code.
You shared a really interesting video, How a Hacker Saved the Internet, that really dives into that world and focuses on this, really chilling incident that almost brought the entire internet down.
It all started with this seemingly harmless piece of code, executils. It's used for compressing data in the Linux operating system.
And just for those who aren't super familiar, Linux is basically the backbone of, a huge chunk of the internet. It powers most of the world's servers, mainframes, supercomputers, so any weakness in Linux could cause some major problems.
And that's exactly what almost happened. This hacker, going by GTAN, snuck into the executils project, slowly gained the trust of the maintainers over several years.
Classic example of social engineering, right? The hacker built relationships, helped out with other projects, and gradually took on more responsibility within executils, all while hiding their true intentions.
And eventually, they were able to sneak in a malicious backdoor into the code. This backdoor would have given them access to millions of servers all over the world.
Basically a master key to the internet, and it was almost included in a bunch of different operating systems.
That's terrifying. What could they have even done with that much access?
The damage could have been catastrophic. They could have stolen sensitive information, spread malware like crazy, or even shut down crucial services all over the world.
The video really highlights how vulnerable our digital infrastructure is, especially with open source software, which is often maintained by volunteers, just people working in their spare time. It's kind of amazing that something so important rests on the shoulders of people who aren't even getting paid.
It really speaks to the dedication of the open source community, though, but it definitely underscores the need for better security and support for these projects. Going back to that near disaster, the scariest part is that this attack was almost impossible to detect.
Seriously, how'd they even find it?
It was so cleverly hidden, it slipped through all the checks and balances. It was only discovered because this one developer, Andres FR, noticed this tiny delay in the code's performance. A delay so small, almost anyone else would have missed it.
Wow, so one person's attention to detail literally saved the internet. Incredible. Makes you wonder how many other threats are out there lurking in the code.
It does make you think. And while there's no definitive proof, the video suggests the attack might have been state-sponsored, maybe from Russia.
Okay, that's a whole other level of scary. If governments are actively trying to, sabotage the internet, what can we even do to protect ourselves?
Well, it definitely highlights the importance of supporting the open source community, financially for sure, but also by contributing to those projects. These developers are the unsung heroes keeping the internet running. They deserve way more recognition and support.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got these hackers, and maybe even governments, trying to control the internet. Now let's talk about another potential threat, artificial intelligence, or AI.
AI could completely revolutionize so many aspects of our lives, but it also has some serious risks, especially when it comes to the internet.
One of the videos, The Dead Internet Theory, Complete Edition, explores that dark side of AI. They suggest it's already being used to manipulate us in ways we don't even realize.
They talk about this idea of divergent intelligence, basically when AI systems start doing things that we don't expect or even find kind of disturbing.
Like self-driving cars making weird decisions, or AI programs creating art that's beautiful but also kind of creepy.
Exactly. Those examples might seem harmless, but they point to a bigger worry. What if AI gets smarter than us and starts doing things we can't predict or control?
Especially when you think about how much of our lives is already run by algorithms, from the news we see to the things we buy. It's kind of unsettling.
We're giving control to these systems we don't fully understand. It's a gamble, for sure.
The video goes even further, though. They even suggest that advanced AI might be reading our minds somehow, using our online activity to build these super detailed profiles and predict our behavior.
That sounds like science fiction. But when you consider how much data companies like Google and Facebook are collecting about us, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility.
Every search, every website, every email, it's all being tracked and analyzed. And that data is being used to create this digital version of you, a version that can be used to manipulate and exploit you.
It's like that dystopian future from books like 1984 might actually be here, but it's not Big Brother we need to worry about.
It's big tech.
Exactly. Instead of a government forcing us to conform, it's these corporations like Google, Facebook, Amazon using algorithms and data collection to subtly shape our thoughts and actions.
It's a much sneakier kind of control, one that often works without us even realizing it.
And the video really goes deep on Google's data collection. They point out that they're tracking us through our searches, emails, browsing history, location data, even our health information.
And it's not just Google, right? Almost every app and platform we use is collecting data about us, often without our explicit consent.
It's like we're living under constant surveillance, this vast network operating in the background, gathering information about our every move.
That information might be used to personalize our experience, sure, but it's also being used to manipulate us, target us with ads, influence our decisions, and shape how we see the world.
One of the sources even claims that Google's incognito mode, that supposedly private browsing feature, is still tracking us and selling that data to advertisers.
If that's true, that's just a blatant violation of our privacy.
It's a wake-up call that we have very little control over how our data is being used.
The video also brings up some of Google's less ethical practices, like when those Street View cars were caught illegally collecting Wi-Fi data from millions of people.
Oh yeah, I remember that. They tried to say it was a mistake, but the fact that they were collecting that data at all is pretty alarming.
It shows they're willing to push the boundaries, even if it means invading our privacy. And the video even criticizes Google's efforts to influence policy by funding academic research and think tanks that support their business model.
So basically buying positive press and silencing critics.
That's the argument. It's a good reminder that we can't just blindly trust information, especially not from big, powerful corporations. We got to be critical thinkers, do our research, and be wary of sources with agendas. Speaking of agendas, let's talk about social media's role in all of this. I mean, we think of it as a way to connect with friends and family, but it's also become this powerful tool for manipulation and control.
The video, The Dead Internet Theory 3, really digs into the dark side of social media, saying it's being used to divide us, manipulate our emotions, and control the narrative.
They argue that platforms like Twitter and Facebook use algorithms to create these echo chambers, where we're constantly exposed to information that just reinforces our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are based on misinformation or straight-up lies.
It's a recipe for polarization and extremism. It makes it almost impossible to have productive conversations or find any sort of common ground.
And then there's the whole issue of bots and fake accounts, spreading propaganda and manipulating public opinion.
Yeah, they claim a huge percentage of social media accounts are bots designed to amplify certain messages, attack opponents, and make it seem like there's this widespread support for particular ideas or candidates.
So it's like astroturfing, but on a massive scale, using technology to make it look like there's this grassroots movement when there really isn't. That's sneaky.
And incredibly effective. Most people can't tell the difference between a real account and a bot, so they're easily swayed by these fake trends and narratives.
The video brings up a really interesting example, the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut movement. You know, the one that pressured Warner Bros. To release a different version of the Justice League movie.
Right, and a cybersecurity report later revealed that a bunch of the accounts involved in that campaign were actually bots. So it looks like it was at least partially orchestrated by some unknown entity.
It's a fascinating example of how social media can be weaponized to achieve a specific goal. It really makes you wonder who's pulling the strings behind these online movements.
It's like a digital puppet show. These powerful forces using bots and algorithms to manipulate the masses.
And we're often totally clueless.
That's the danger, right? Now let's shift gears a little and talk about something else that's pretty unsettling. The idea that all our online activity is being used to build these psychological profiles that can predict and control our behavior.
You're talking about that convergent thinking and divergent thinking idea from the Dead Internet Theory 4.
Exactly. So convergent thinking is basically about finding the most logical, efficient solution to a problem. Divergent thinking, on the other hand, is about exploring lots of possibilities, coming up with creative solutions. The source argues that while AI is getting really good at convergent thinking, it still struggles with divergent thinking.
Makes sense, I guess. AI is essentially just pattern recognition on a massive scale. It can analyze tons of data and spot trends, but it's not good at thinking outside the box or coming up with something truly new.
And that's where the potential for manipulation comes in. If AI can predict our behavior based on our past actions, it can influence our choices by showing us options that are likely to get the desired response.
Like those personalized recommendations you see on Amazon or Netflix.
Yeah.
The algorithm knows your purchases and viewing history and suggests things it thinks you'll like.
Right. And while those recommendations can be helpful, they can also be manipulative. They're steering you towards specific choices, limiting your options, and just reinforcing your existing preferences.
And that same principle could apply to, other areas of our lives. The news we read, the people we connect with, even the politicians we support.
Absolutely. Imagine the algorithm knows your political leanings. It can feed you a constant stream of information that just confirms your biases, making you more set in your beliefs and less likely to consider other points of view.
Like being trapped in an ideological bubble, where you're constantly bombarded with info that reinforces your worldview.
And that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
It sets the stage for extremism and polarization.
People get so convinced that they're right and everyone else is wrong that they start demonizing and dehumanizing their opponents. It's a recipe for a breakdown in civil discourse and a rise in intolerance and hatred. And here's the worst part. Most people have no idea they're even being manipulated. They think they're making their own choices, but they're actually being nudged in a certain direction by algorithms designed to exploit their biases and vulnerabilities.
It's like a form of digital brainwashing, slowly shaping our thoughts and behaviors without our consent.
And it's happening on a global scale, affecting billions of people.
This is starting to feel pretty bleak. Is there any hope for a better internet? One that's less about manipulation and more about genuine information and connection?
That's the question, isn't it? But despite all these challenges, there might be some glimmers of hope. Remember that Dead Internet Theory 2 video about Google search results being like a Potemkin village?
Yeah, pretty unsettling stuff.
While disturbing, it also suggests there's more to the internet than meets the eye. The video claims there's this vast hidden internet, a whole network of websites and content that's not easily accessible through normal search engines.
Okay, so there's this whole other internet we're not even aware of.
Exactly. And they claim that this hidden internet is where the real information is, the stuff that's been suppressed or censored by the algorithms.
It's like some digital underground, a place where you can still find alternative perspectives and dissenting voices. But how do you even find this hidden internet?
It can be tricky, but it's not impossible. There are tools and techniques that can help you bypass those filters and find information that's been buried. It's about becoming a digital detective, learning to navigate the darker corners of the internet and uncovering the truth.
That's where media literacy comes in, right?
Absolutely. We need the skills to critically evaluate information, to identify bias, to separate fact from fiction, and to find those reliable sources.
So it's not just passively accepting what the algorithms give us, but becoming savvy consumers of information.
Exactly. It's about taking back control of our online experience and ensuring that the internet remains a tool for connection, enlightenment, and empowerment.
I like that, taking back control. It's easy to feel powerless with all these threats, but we're not helpless. There must be things we can do, individually and collectively, to fight back.
You're right. A lot of the sources we've looked at offer some potential solutions, even if they seem tough. One common suggestion is breaking up those big tech companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon.
They become so big, they're basically monopolies, right? They control so much of the internet and have way too much influence.
Exactly. Breaking them up could create more competition, which could lead to more innovation, more diverse services, and less control over our data.
Another idea is implementing stricter regulations to protect our privacy and limit the power of these tech giants.
We need laws that prevent companies from collecting and selling our data without our consent. Laws that give us more control over how our information is being used.
And we need regulators who are willing to actually enforce those laws and hold these companies accountable.
It's not just about passing laws, it's about making sure they're actually enforced.
We also need to invest in digital literacy education, right? Teaching people how to navigate the online world safely and responsibly, how to spot misinformation, and how to protect their privacy.
Especially with so much of our lives moving online, digital literacy is becoming as essential as knowing how to read and write.
We also need to support independent journalism and those alternative media outlets so we're not relying on big tech for all our news.
That's crucial for getting a variety of viewpoints and unbiased reporting.
And we can't forget about that open source community, those developers who create and maintain so much of the internet.
They're the unsung heroes, working for little or no pay. They need more support to keep doing what they do.
And we could do our part by being more mindful of our own online behavior, being more careful about what we share, the websites we visit, the apps we use.
We need to be more conscious consumers of information and more active in shaping the future of the internet.
The Dead Internet Theory 4 actually had a pretty interesting solution, using AI to fight AI.
They argued that the same tech that's manipulating us can be used to empower us.
So fighting fire with fire.
Right. We could use AI to detect and filter out misinformation, expose those bots and fake accounts, and create tools that help us navigate the internet more safely.
It's about taking back control and using technology to actually make the internet better, more trustworthy. Speaking of which, what if the internet stopped working? Video really got me thinking about how much we rely on the internet for everything. What would even happen if it suddenly disappeared?
The video didn't paint a pretty picture. They talked about economic collapse, social unrest, and basically a return to more primitive ways of communicating.
It's a good reminder of how much we depend on the internet and what a massive impact a shutdown would have.
But it's also a reminder that we're not completely helpless. We can prepare for that kind of event by learning offline skills, building strong communities, and finding ways to connect without relying on technology.
It's about remembering there's a whole world out there, beyond the digital. We can survive and even thrive without the internet.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance, enjoying the benefits of technology, but recognizing its limits.
And remembering that the internet is a tool. How we use it is up to us. We have the power to shape its future.
Exactly. Now, we've covered a lot of ground, from scary threats to potential solutions. So to go back to our original question, is the internet doomed?
It's a complicated question, right?
Based on everything we've discussed, the answer is kind of both yes and no. The internet we once knew, that open, democratic space that promised to connect and empower people, it's mostly gone.
It's been taken over by bots, manipulated by algorithms, and increasingly controlled by powerful corporations and governments.
And those threats we talked about, AI, solar flares, disappearing content, they're real and growing.
But the internet is also incredibly resilient and adaptable. There's still hope.
We can push back against those who are trying to control us, build a more ethical and equitable internet, and reclaim our power.
So where do we even start?
Awareness is key. Understanding the issues is the first step to finding solutions.
And then?
Critical thinking, media literacy, and a willingness to challenge the way things are.
We need to be active, not passive.
The internet's future isn't set in stone. It's a story that's still being written. And we all have a role to play in shaping how it ends.
I like that. As our listener digs deeper into these sources, what should they be thinking about?
Ask yourself, what kind of internet do I want to live in? What should it represent? What can I do to make that vision a reality?
It's about recognizing our shared responsibility to shape the digital world.
The internet isn't doomed, but its future is uncertain. It's up to all of us.
So let's build an internet that's worthy of our humanity.
Well said. It's not about abandoning the internet, it's about making it something that serves us, not the other way around.
We need to be the architects of this digital world.
Exactly. We have the power to design the internet we want, one that helps us connect, be creative, and work together instead of dividing us and manipulating us. Now, before we wrap up, let's circle back to that dead internet theory and look at some of the specific examples they use to support their claims.
Okay, like what?
One of the more interesting ones is the Mandela effect, where tons of people share these false memories of past events.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's so weird. Didn't we all think Nelson Mandela died in prison back in the 80s?
Exactly. And the theory suggests this Mandela effect could be evidence of an alternate reality or even a simulation where history has been subtly changed.
Oh, that's kind of trippy.
It is.
Yeah.
And while there are more rational explanations for it, like how our memories can be faulty or how misinformation spreads, the Mandela effect taps into this deeper anxiety about what's real in this digital age.
Makes you wonder if what we think is real is actually just a carefully constructed illusion.
Right. And the dead internet theory also uses the disappearance of old internet content as evidence that someone's trying to erase the past and control the narrative.
They claim that websites, forums, even whole online communities have just vanished, leaving behind this sanitized, curated version of the internet.
Right. While some of it can be explained by natural causes like link rot and server crashes, the theory says there's a more deliberate effort to shape how we see history.
Like someone's going through a library and removing any books that don't fit their agenda.
Exactly. And erasing the past makes it harder to question the way things are, to learn from our mistakes, and to hold people accountable.
It's true. Those who control the past control the present and the future. That's powerful.
It is. Another example they use is all the thin content and clickbait we see online.
We talked about that earlier, but it's such a big problem.
The theory suggests that this flood of low-quality content is a deliberate strategy to distract us, to keep us busy with trivial stuff, and to keep us from focusing on real issues.
It's like we're constantly being bombarded with junk food for our minds.
Yeah.
We end up mentally malnourished and can't think critically.
That's a perfect analogy, and the algorithms are a big part of the problem. They prioritize content that gets clicks and generates ad revenue, regardless of whether it's good or accurate.
So we're drowning in these crazy headlines and shallow entertainment, all designed to keep us scrolling and clicking instead of engaging with the world in a meaningful way.
It's the digital equivalent of bread and circuses, keeping the masses distracted while those in power do whatever they want.
Okay, so thin content is one thing, but what about all these influencers? The dead internet theory also brings them up.
They say many influencers are basically paid to promote stuff they don't even believe in, all to make money for corporations.
Makes sense. Seems like every post is sponsored by something these days.
While some are genuinely passionate about what they're promoting, it's getting harder to tell the difference between authentic content and ads.
It's like trust but verify, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know who to trust online anymore.
Exactly. The lines are blurred, and that's eroding trust in these online personalities.
It makes us cynical and skeptical, which might not be a bad thing, but it makes it hard to find real connection online.
You're right. Now, the theory also talks about how AI can create these fake online personas, basically bots pretending to be real people.
That's kind of creepy. What would be the point of that?
Well, they could spread propaganda, manipulate opinions, or even just create the illusion of a bigger online community.
So it's about making it look like more people support something than actually do.
Exactly. And as AI gets better, it's going to be harder and harder to tell the difference. It could really damage trust online.
It's like the internet's becoming a hall of mirrors. We don't even know who's real anymore.
That's a great way to put it. And this loss of trust could make people avoid connecting with each other online. It could lead to a more isolated society.
Okay, so we've got bots pretending to be people, thin content, vanishing information, and all this manipulation happening. It's a lot to take in. Anything else from the dead internet theory we should discuss?
One final point they make is about censorship and how dissenting voices are being suppressed.
You mean when platforms delete content, ban users, or change their algorithms to silence opinions that challenge the status quo?
Exactly. And while some content moderation is necessary to prevent harmful things like hate speech and violence, the theory suggests that it's being used more broadly to stifle any disagreement and control what we see.
It's a slippery slope. If we start censoring things just because we don't like them, who gets to decide what's okay?
It's a valid concern. We have to remember that the internet was meant to be a free and open platform for sharing ideas. Trying to control or censor that goes against the whole point.
So, after all this talk about the dead internet theory, what are we supposed to think? Is it just a bunch of conspiracy theories, or is there some truth to it?
Remember, it's just that a theory. It's based on observations and interpretations, but there's no hard evidence to prove any of it's actually true.
So we shouldn't take it as fact.
Right, but it makes you think, doesn't it? It challenges our assumptions about the internet and forces us to consider the possibility that we're being manipulated.
Even if some of it is exaggerated, it's a reminder to be skeptical, to question what we see online, and to seek out different perspectives.
It's about taking control and making sure the internet is a force for good, not a tool for manipulation and control.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. AI, solar flares, disappearing content, the power of search engines. It's been intense.
It has. We've gone from scary threats to potential solutions. We've even explored these really thought-provoking theories about the nature of the internet.
So what now? What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
The internet is clearly at a crossroads, but I believe we have the power to shape its future. It starts with awareness, having open conversations, and understanding the issues.
Like what we've done in this deep dive.
Exactly. We also need critical thinking, media literacy, and the courage to challenge the status quo.
We can't be passive. We have to actively shape the digital world we want to live in.
The internet's future is still being written, and we all have a role to play in how it ends.
I love that. As our listeners keep learning about this, what should they keep in mind?
Ask yourself, what kind of internet do I want? What values should it represent? What can I actually do to make that happen?
It's about recognizing our shared responsibility to create the digital world we want to live in.
The internet isn't doomed, but its future is uncertain. It's up to all of us.
Let's build an internet that truly reflects our humanity.
Well said.
So before we wrap things up, is there anything else about the dead internet theory that we should touch on?
Yeah, actually. The theory also talks about influencer culture as another piece of this, potentially manipulated online world.
Influencers. I follow a ton of them. What's the problem there?
Well, the theory suggests that a lot of influencers are basically paid to promote products and ideas that, honestly, they might not even believe in themselves. all to line the pockets of big corporations.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much. It seems like almost every post I see these days is sponsored by some company.
Right. And while some influencers are definitely genuine and passionate about what they're sharing, it's becoming harder and harder to tell the difference between real content and paid ads.
That's like trust but verify, right? You just never know who to believe online anymore.
Exactly. The lines have gotten really blurry, and that's definitely eroding our trust in those online personalities and what they're telling us.
It's made me way more skeptical, that's for sure. Which
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does make it harder to find real connection and build community online.
You've hit on a really important point there. Okay, so one final example they use to support the dead internet theory is this idea of increased censorship and how dissenting voices are being silenced online.
You mean like when platforms like Twitter or Facebook delete content, ban users, or even tweak their algorithms to bury viewpoints that challenge the powers that be?
Exactly. And while, yes, some content moderation is totally necessary to prevent the spread of harmful stuff, hate speech, violence, that kind of thing, the theory argues that censorship is being used way more broadly now, basically to stifle any kind of dissent and control what we all see and hear.
It seems like a dangerous path, though, doesn't it? Once you start censoring ideas just because you don't agree with them, who gets to decide what's acceptable?
It's a slippery slope, for sure. The definition of harmful could easily expand to include anything that challenges those in power.
Right. We have to remember that the internet was originally meant to be this completely open space where anyone could share their ideas. Trying to control that, to censor that, goes against the whole point of it, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Okay, so after diving into all these different aspects of the dead internet theory, where do we land? Where do we stand?
It's been quite a journey. Should we be worried? Should we be panicking?
It's really important to remember that it's just that, a theory. It's a collection of observations, speculations, interpretations, but there's no definitive proof that any of it is actually true.
So we shouldn't be taking it as gospel.
Exactly, but it does make you think, right? It challenges our assumptions about what the internet is and how it works, and it forces us to consider the possibility that, yeah, maybe we're being manipulated in ways we don't even realize.
Even if some of the things they're saying are a bit exaggerated, it's a good reminder to stay skeptical, to question what we see online, and to make sure we're getting our information from a variety of sources.
Exactly. It's about taking back control and making sure the internet stays a force for good, not a tool for control and manipulation.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? AI, solar flares, that disappearing content, the power of search engines, all of it. It's been intense.
It has. We started with some pretty bleak possibilities, explored some potential solutions, and even, went down some rabbit holes with those fascinating theories about what the internet really is.
So where do we go from here? Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap things up?
I think it's clear that the internet's facing some major challenges, technological, social, political, but it's also clear that we're not powerless.
Okay, I like that. So how do we move forward? What's the first step?
It starts with awareness, like we've been talking about, understanding the issues and having open, honest conversations about them.
Like we've done in this deep dive, right?
Exactly. And from there, we need to start thinking critically, improving our media literacy, and being willing to challenge those systems that aren't working for us.
We can't just sit back and watch this all unfold, right? We have to be active in shaping the digital world we want to live in.
Absolutely. The internet's future isn't set in stone. It's a story that's still being written, and we all have a say in how it ends.
I love that. So as our listeners continue to explore these ideas and sources, what should they keep in mind? What questions should they be asking themselves?
I'd encourage them to think about, what kind of internet do I actually want to live in? What values are most important to me? And really, what can I do in my own way to make that vision a reality?
It's about moving beyond those feelings of fear and apathy and recognizing that, yeah, we have a responsibility to create the digital world we want to live in.
The internet might not be doomed, but its future is definitely uncertain. It's up to all of us to decide what happens next.
So let's get to work. Let's build an internet that's truly worthy of our humanity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.